I was talking with Erin this morning, and she reminded me that it was November 8th, a year ago, that their life was drastically changed and shaken and scattered really into ashes, a lot of it. And so we kind of followed that for a few months, and then it's kind of like, well, the last few months, it's we don't know what's going on. You know, we haven't really connected with them, and so it was, I think, early this year when one of the elders said, hey, we should ask Josh to come and speak. And so we're happy that they're here. And what we've done is we've asked Josh and Erin to come this morning during Sunday school and just share a little bit about where they're at and where God's brought them up to this point, and then leave some time for questions, too, if you guys want to ask, too. So let's just have a word of prayer, and we'll start. God, thanks for the day. Thanks for the chance to be together. Thanks for bringing the Gallagher family safely here. And God, I pray you just work in their lives even as they share what you've been doing in their lives to us. In Jesus' name, amen. Josh and Erin.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We're going to come up here. And during this time, we just want to give you a little bit of a one-year journey of what we've been on, kind of a brief snapshot of everything that's happened, then open it up for some Q&A at the end. But before we get started, the story you're about to hear, it involves our whole family. So before we even start anything, I want our kids real quick to come up, and I'd like to introduce you to our kids as well, because they have been on this journey just as much as the rest of us. And our first one here is our oldest. That's Addison. This is Addison right here. And then we have Emily and Gavin. And what is maybe, they don't know I'm going to do this. This is the beauty of it. What is one thing that God has taught you this past year as we've walked together as a family? We'll use that mic right there. Who wants to go first?
No. Oh, you do, buddy?
Gavin, okay, what's God taught you, buddy?
That God that be nice to us and give us our house.
He gave us our house. That's right, buddy. He did. What else for you two?
That he is always with us.
He is. He's always with us. What
I
else?
learned that even when everything looks like nothing can go right and any more can go wrong, he just stands out from nowhere and gives us something that makes it all worth it.
Yes, he does. Great job. All right, you guys can have a seat. Thank you.
Careful.
Well, we moved to Paradise, California 4 months before the fire hit. The little bit of the backstory is I was at a church in Roswell, New Mexico, there for 4 years. The lead pastor said, you're ready to go be a lead pastor, but it's not going to be here. I want to be here for probably 4 or 5 years, but you're ready to be a lead pastor now. What happened was a series of events where I eventually ended up in Denver, Colorado, looking for a job for about 10 months. During that time, I finished my doctorate. Also, I was cleaning up messes for my brother at a Servpro franchise, desperately looking, saying, okay, God, what's next? About a week before I heard about Paradise, California, just saw it on a job posting, I thought, okay, God, I guess I'm not going to be a lead pastor during the season, which is fine. Then all of a sudden, this job opens up. I apply for it. There comes down to the final 2 candidates. And in God's divine wisdom, the church actually chose the other candidate ahead of me. I thought, okay, no big deal, moving on. Well, about a month after that, they called me back and said the first guy said no. He was probably really wise in what he did. So they called me back and said, are you interested? We had some honest conversations, but after another visit, we felt like this is where God was calling us to be. So we'd been there 4 months before November 8th.
All right, so November 8th happened, and when we moved to California, I was terrified of fire and that it was going to burn. And Josh kept saying, no, you're fine. We've lived in Minnesota. There's tornadoes. Wouldn't you rather have a tornado than a fire? And I didn't sleep for the first 3 months we lived there. But that morning we woke up and Emily said, Mom, there's some smoke out in the distance. And we looked it up, and there was a fire burning a ways away. And so we just continued on our day. We got the kids ready for school. Josh took the kids to school. And as the moments passed, the sky changed colors. It went from a beautiful sunny morning to it looked like it was about 7:30, 8 o'clock within a matter of an hour. It was so dark, and it started to rain ashes. And at that point, we decided we're just going to go to Sacramento for the weekend, let the smoke clear. There's no way our home's going to burn. We're on the opposite side of town. The entire town would have to burn before we burned. And we were packing some stuff up. Josh went into the basement to grab a suitcase for us, and he came running into the house and said, "We need to leave now." In that moment, God spoke to him. We jumped in the car and we drove away. And the day kind of unfolded after that.
On that day, there was 85 civilians lost their lives, which was actually a miracle, because the dynamics about Paradise, it sits up on a ridge, and there's only really 3 ways in and 3 ways out. And there's not like ditches to drive in, it's just trees straight up and down. Also, there was over 18,000 structures damaged, $16.5 billion in damages that were lost. 90% of the town and the structures were lost. So if you want to put that in context, basically take Thief River and in 4 hours narrow it down to about 800 people. And that's the devastation that occurred on that day. 16 of our 24 staff members lost their lives. We lost 85% of our original congregation, 75% of our lay leaders, and over half of our paid staff after the fire occurred. Another thing that happened was the water supply was damaged throughout the entire town, because when it got so hot, the pipes actually melted and it released this chemical in the water called benzene. You can't drink it, you can't even take a shower in it, because if you inhale it, it can cause you a lot of problems. So it basically took our whole community and wiped it out. We were talking to FEMA reps because they came in, they were there early on. They said, this is the worst disaster we've ever seen. Over Katrina or anything else, they said the reason why this one's so bad is usually when something hits a town, there's still a heartbeat there. Like if it hit half of the town, everything else would be okay because the other half would still thrive. They said the entire heartbeat of this town was ripped out. We've never seen anything like this. They said if this town has any chance of being back on the map, it needs 2 things. The first thing, the schools have to reopen because you've got to re-engage families. And then after that, your churches have to be up and running, because the church is where people find a lot of community. And so that's what we did. During that Thanksgiving Day, right after this happened, we went and we had some time together in Denver with our family. And it was during that time, all of you showed up in a very big way for us. And my wife's going to share about that.
Mm-hmm. So we are in Colorado. We knew we needed to get the kids back to a stable environment that they knew. And our home burned, but the church didn't. So we had to stay. My ultimatum was if they both burned, we left. And so the kids and I moved to Denver, and Josh is back, and here I am by myself with the kids saying, okay, God, what do we do now? And in the matter of 24 hours, we found out that our insurance had gone bankrupt. So the little nest egg of our loss of use policy that I had planned to find us a place to rent disappeared. And Josh is gone, and what do we do? And so I called Esther, my mother-in-law, in tears, saying, this is how much rent is going to cost. I can't do this. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe we just need to go back. I don't know what to do. And she, over the phone, ever so calmly said, you don't need to worry, because today at church we took a special offering for you guys. And this is what came in. And the amount that came in that day was the exact same cost for what rent would have cost us to live there for 7 months, to the dollar. And just the overwhelming peace that came with that was incredible. And also at Thanksgiving, we received a suitcase that came from this church, and a lot of wonderful, wonderful ladies who spent hours, I can't even imagine how long it took, quilting us 4 beautiful quilts. And from the bottom of all of our hearts, we just want to say thank you for that, because those quilts were all we had at that time. And when the kids and I moved into our rental, we had a pillow and we each had our quilt, and that is what kept us warm until we accumulated beds and all of that. So you were the hands and feet of Jesus to us, and we are so thankful for that.
We saw God work in a lot of ways through this journey. We're going to hit on some of these now, and then I'm going to hit some on in the message later. But that was the first major answer to prayer that we saw came from this church. So we can't thank you guys enough, not only for what you did in that moment, but the foundation that the Lord used to instill in me, that I passed on to my family, and then on to a community that I'm leading right now, is from this church. So we just genuinely want to say thank you. It doesn't feel like that does it enough justice, because the legacy that this church has meant in my life and in our family's life has been completely overwhelming. So everything that you're about ready to hear of God, moments of what he's been doing, know that you have all had a part in that, and we can't thank you enough for that. But you were the first answer to prayer, and we said, okay, God, we're going to keep following you. How are you going to provide? And to the dollar to help us pay for the rent while we were separated, you guys came through for that, so thank you so much. After they were settled in Denver, Colorado, I went back to brave Paradise, California by myself. I was living in an RV in somebody's driveway. I lived in an RV for 7 months. It was interesting, let's just say the least. And did you know you have to have special toilet paper in an RV? I didn't know that, but now I know it. Anyway, so we were back there. Right when I got back, members of Trump's cabinet wanted to hold a meeting in Paradise. They reached out to us and said, can we hold it at the church? And so they came to our church, CAL FIRE, all these bigwigs were there. I got a free pass to go up to Paradise because Paradise was locked down. They weren't letting anyone up there because of all the damage that occurred. They didn't trust people just going up there. So I got a special pass to go up there for this meeting. On that time, when that meeting was over, I actually was supposed to go straight back down the hill. I didn't. I went to our house because I had to see it. We knew that it was destroyed. But in the moment I went to our lot and saw it completely devastated, I just had this overwhelming peace. It was weird. I can't explain it. But I shot a video for myself of saying, I knew that this was going to be a long journey that we were going to be on, that our lives would never be the same because of this tragedy. But in that video, I basically said, hey, I believe that God is still alive. I believe the power of the Holy Spirit is still inside of me, and I believe Jesus has authority over all of it. I don't understand it, but I still believe. I shot that video for myself because I was like, I need this reminder. Well, after I shot the video, about a day later, I just felt like the Lord was saying, you need to post that on your social media account. I'm not a big poster. I don't do that. I look at a lot of other people's posts of what they're having for dinner that night or things like that, but that's just not me. But I decided to post it. Through that post, there was over 100,000 people that saw it, and it was through that post that actually CNN ended up reaching out to us and offered us a pretty amazing opportunity that Aaron's going to share with you.
A door that got opened. CNN flew Josh and I to New York for 24 hours. And during that time, we had the privilege to go to the studio, and they interviewed Josh along with 3 other faith leaders of different backgrounds that had all experienced tragedy in their community. And the whole purpose of the morning that was aired on Christmas Eve was for how do you restore hope to a community that's experienced devastation. And it was so cool to see how God opened the door because of the fire for Josh to be able to sit down and to share the love of Jesus with anyone who watches CNN. And we just had a great time in New York together and just being able to share the love of Jesus.
They put makeup on me too. It was a little awkward, but I got over it. But we made it work. After we came back from that experience, the Lord just kind of put something on my heart of saying, you're going to have a Christmas Eve service in Paradise. And I was like, this can't happen. Because the town was completely locked down. We didn't have power. We had no water. So I said, okay, God, if this is what you want, you're going to have to start opening these doors. So I started making phone calls. We found out that we could get a special pass to open up the town so we could have this Christmas Eve service because we told them, this town needs community once again. And what better way to celebrate that than around the birth of our Savior? So we called up Samaritan's Purse. They'd been partnering with us. We said, can we make this happen? They said, let's do it. So we figured out how to get power to the church. We found out how our well water would actually suffice because it wasn't damaged. Then, in addition, Samaritan's Purse came and said, we want to partner with you. They brought in My Pillows from the My Pillow guy. There was like 5,000 My Pillows that they gave away. They gave away gift cards. Panera Bread gave away meals to everybody. And then to top it all off, we gave away $100 gift cards to everybody in the community. It was the first event back in Paradise, and it's centered around the birth of Jesus Christ. We had 3 different services, over 4,000 people come and attend that amazing event. Many people were saved, and we knew, okay, God, if you're going to do something amazing, we want it centered around you. So it was literally an act of God that we were able to hold the first event up in Paradise, and it's centered around our Christmas Eve service. But I wish I could tell you that everything was great after that. And God's just been providing, and it's just been like revival has broken out. It hasn't. It has actually been extremely difficult because, as we all know, when you follow God, it's never easy. And some of the things that have happened, you've heard the phrase, hurting people hurt people, right? Take a whole community of hurting people, then try to lead them while you're still hurting yourself. Emotion is going to be at an all-time high. People are going to say things and do things based on what they feel in the moment. We all know that doesn't end well. Well, through what's happened, we have lost, as I mentioned, over half of our staff after the fire. A lot of them have decided, I don't want to be here anymore. And when they left, they took a lot of their followers with them. Our church has basically been gutted. We had one former staff member that left before I came come back and plant a church very close to where our church is at. When I called him up and I said, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? Who's your main target? He told me unashamedly, he says, I'm going after your people that are frustrated with you. Based on that, we've literally had a church split. We were averaging before the fire right about 1,200 people on an average Sunday. Out of those 1,200 people, there's probably only about 200 that are left. Half of our staff is gone, and when they left, they also, because the stigma is there right now, if you leave, there's a little bit of, you weren't strong enough. So instead of just leaving quietly, a lot of these staff members needed to point the finger at somebody. Guess who that somebody was? Because I can't just leave because it's too hard. I have to leave because it's someone else's fault. The emotional toil that our family has been through, let's just say if my wife would have been there during this time, we would not still be there. It was dark, dark days. When you're trying to do the best you can with what you've been given, only to have it thrown back in your face time and time again, having your integrity questioned, your motives, really what your heart is, constantly coming back at you, and then hearing week after week how this family's leaving and that family's leaving and that family's leaving over rumors and lies that have nothing to do with who you are. It's not been easy. But through all that, we have continued to see God's faithfulness. And one of the ways that we saw his faithfulness was actually when we went back to sift through our lot. It was a great reminder that in the middle of everything that was going on, God is still present.
That is what our lot looked like after the fire, and that's what we got to sift through. Normally, after a fire, when you sift, it is ash because it hasn't rained. Well, this rained for 2 months before we got to sift, so it was a mucky paste that we got to dig through. Samaritan's Purse came, met us at the house. The forecast for the day was torrential flooding rains. We started to dig. There was one thing we wanted to find, and that was Josh's wedding ring that was left in my jewelry box in our closet. So a team started digging in that area. Nothing was being found. We found little trinkets, a tea set that Addison had, a piggy bank from Gavin, some coins from a coin collection. Little things were being found. In the middle of that, the dishwasher is still in one piece, and all of the dishes inside were untouched. So that was an exciting find. But during that, the sun came out. It didn't rain. There was a joy at that place that was undescribable. There were tears as we processed what had happened, and it came time to leave. And the leader from Samaritan's Purse of our site said, you know what, we're going to stop and pray that we can find that ring before we go. So everyone stopped. We prayed. The next rake of the fork, a ring got caught on the prong. And it was so mangled, you couldn't even see what it was. Josh washed it off in some water, and there was his ring. It did liquefy on one part, which means the temperatures in our home that day were over 2,000 degrees. But when that ring came out, it was God saying, look, I've got you. It's going to be okay. I'm going to take care of you, and I am taking care of you. And we will not fix the ring. It's not fixable. And so it's in a little bag that we'll just keep with us to remember God's faithfulness to us.
So there's been highs and there's been lows. Some of the other amazing things that we saw God do was right now, our church is actually healthier than it's ever been. Over half of our church, I said about 200 people are left from the original congregation. Well, actually, on an average Sunday right now, we're running over probably about 550 because there's that many brand new people that have come to our church of saying, this is what I want to be a part of. I want to know more about this Jesus that you talk about. We've seen revival in our church, but it hasn't come without its cost. Some other amazing things that we've seen God do is I've had the opportunity to speak at a Samaritan's Purse conference. God's just opened some amazing doors for me to meet people that I should probably not be meeting. We'll just leave it like that. But have been encouraged by them in a lot of different ways to keep following God on this amazing adventure, even though we're not exactly sure where it's going to end. Some of the other highlights of the amazing things that have happened, every year we would hold a trunk and treat event at our church. Normally we would have probably about 4,000 people at this event. It was something we did year after year after year. Well, this year we came up and was like, are we going to do this again? Right away we're like, I don't know if we can handle it, all the turmoil and everything that's been going on. We finally decided, no, we're going to do it. We held the event, and we had over 2,500 people come up and be a part of that event. And usually, parents are just like, okay, let's just go through the line. Parents had huge smiles on their faces because normal doesn't exist up there. But holding that single event has helped the community once again remember the church is the center of this community of what's happening. Also, we understood that on the 8th, this past November 8th, we knew that we were going to grieve and mourn. That was just the way that it was going to be. They held that memorial service actually at our church because our church has literally become the center for the community. We've had community events when they had their town hall meetings. They had an organization come in and basically plan, hey, what's this community going to look like in the future? They held that at our church. Every week when they were doing cleanup, they would come in, they would have their safety meetings at our church as well. It was amazing to see how God arranged it. For some reason, our church has been at the center of the community. The community leaders have come up to me and said to me, they don't go to our church, a lot of them don't even go to church. They said, you have no idea what this church means to this community, that it represents something stable and it represents hope. And I'm just like, hi, I'm Josh, nice to meet you. I mean, I don't know any of these people, but we would have meeting after meeting after meeting. So on the 8th, we came together as a community, and the community drove it. I was a part of it. It was a very interesting event, we'll just say that. Because when all you have is yourself and your own bootstraps, kind of gets, there's not a lot of hope. It can be empty. I knew that was probably going to happen. So I got together with a group of other pastors on the ridge there in Paradise and then down in Chico, just a city a little ways away. We said, we need to bring the hope of Jesus on the 9th. We're going to remember on the 8th. We're going to mourn, which is all good, but we need to have something that points people forward on the 9th. So we started praying again, started reaching out. God brought all the details together once again. There was about just under 2,000 people at the community event. On the 9th, when we had our event, we had over 4,500 people. We brought in an illusionist, we had a time of worship, and then Tim Tebow actually came and he brought a message of hope and encouragement. During that night, there was probably close to 100 people that again accepted Jesus as Lord and Savior. I share all that with you to say, I don't know why God does what he does. I'm the first to say, I have no clue. But when they used to build communities, back in the time of the settlers, they would come into an area, and one of the first things that they would establish was the church. Because the church was the area that the community would come together, they would gather, they would build relationships. Well, in our society, the church has become more on the outskirts, where local sports, local politics have become more of what drives the community. Well, for some reason, we have gone backwards, we could say, in a good way of where we're at right now. That the church that we're a part of has actually become the center of community. Every single week, we actually hold the top 2 largest events in our community. The first one is our community dinner. We have a community dinner every Thursday night for anyone that wants to come. Because these people have food, but they don't have community. So we're providing a place where they can do that. So every week we have between 400 and 500 people come to our church to just have a meal and connect. That's it. And then in our Sunday services that we have next to the high school football games, it's the largest event that is held in Paradise every single week. And we believe that God's put us there to bring revival and hope in his name. Because we believe this isn't an obstacle to overcome, but rather it's an opportunity to embrace by his strength. So those are just some of the things that he's been doing. Right now, we're back together as a family. Yay. I'm out of a trailer. Yay. Actually, that was a really cool way that God provided with the house for us. Why don't you share that real quick?
We knew that housing was not existent in Chico, and we decided that's where we kind of needed to land. It's an established community 20 minutes from Paradise. This is where we're going to end up till we can get back to Paradise or whatever God does with that. And we started looking at rentals, and I just cried. What was out there was not good. And Josh called me one day and said, there is a builder in the church that started a home before the fire, and it's done, and they have offered it to us. Are you interested? And I said, I don't care where it is. I don't care what it looks like. We'll take it. And so Josh was able to move in May with his blow-up mattress and his camping chair. That's
College
all
all
he had.
over again. It was college.
And then the kids and I, we all moved back in June into our new home. And for the first time in a while, the kids have a backyard to play in. The dog has a fenced yard to play in. We are finding normalcy every day in small things, from a silverware organizer in the kitchen drawer to having dinner with Dad. It's just been such a blessing to be back together in a new community. The kids are all in new schools this year, and they are thriving. We are all making new friends, because this was a new move again, but it's been really good.
So just in the past year, we've seen some of the highest of highs, but also the lowest of lows. But through it all, and I'm going to mention this a little bit later in my message, through it all, God has literally been faithful every step of the way. He's never given us too much, but he's never given us not enough. Even there's the physical side of it, but even the spiritual and emotional side of it, he's always been there. When I've said, God, I can't do this anymore, he'll meet me in the moment. He'll say, no, we've got this. He shows me something, and we keep moving ahead. People have asked me, if you could go back and take the fire away, would you? Unashamedly, I say no. And the reason why is because I have seen how God has used this experience to bring me closer to himself, my family closer to him, our family closer together. And even though I wouldn't trade it, do I want to do it again? Absolutely not. But it has been completely worth it. And so those have just been some of the amazing ways that we've seen God work in this past year. So at this time, I guess we have a little bit of time for some Q&A. So if there's any questions or things that you'd like us to dive into a little bit deeper, we can. We wanted to give a kind of brief flyover for the past year and then open it up to see if there's anything that we could maybe answer a little more specifically in those lines. Just raise your hand and Aaron will come with a mic. Oh, what's that? Did you hear?
Just wondering if there's new building going on. Have they opened up the city to begin new construction and new homes?
Yes, and people are looking for loans for those homes, Tom, in case you're... Yes, there is rebuilding that is going on. It's slow, because the biggest problem right now is labor. There's not enough people to actually skilled labor in order to build the homes. So it is going slow right now. I think they said they issued about 500 building permits. So the rebuilding is happening, but the projection is, at the rate at which they're going, it's probably going to be 20 to 25 years before the community is even back to where it was before the fire. But it is slowly started. Mm-hmm.
And the week of the year anniversary, they actually finished the cleanup. So most of the city is clean. There are still a few private lots that need to be cleaned up, and now the tree removal process is starting, and I believe they said 90% of the total trees in Paradise will be removed. So that is there's still a lot more change with that coming.
Mm-hmm.
Esther just said, not all of the homes burned. There are pockets. It's crazy when you drive through, because there's just full destruction, and then a house all by itself that didn't get touched. And so there are still people living up there. On our street alone, our house was the only house that burned. So our neighbors are up there. Some of them are trying to sell their house and move. But there are still people living there, and their house didn't change, but everything around them changed. And I think there's a lot of survival guilt that you could say, and I think that's probably, those people are struggling.
It's lonely. It's extremely lonely. That was the reason why we wanted to have a community dinner, was to bring the community together. They don't need food, but they need community. And as the church, we wanted to be the place to provide that community for them, at least as a launching pad. So yeah, there's a lot of lonely people that are still there, that are struggling with relationships. Again, just put in context, imagine that 75 to 80% of your current relationships, neighbors, and community are gone. The amount of depression, desperation, and hopelessness sets in really quick. As we've been advised going through this journey, they said, get ready to start watching your suicide rates skyrocket. Marriages are going to start coming apart because when you put that much stress on people in that amount of time, people will break. When they do, you've got to be ready to help them. And sure enough, we have seen marriages break. We have seen already a couple suicides because people's worlds literally were turned upside down in a matter of 4 hours. And now they're just trying to put themselves back together. And that's where we feel called to bring the hope and love of Jesus, of saying, yeah, your life can be put back together. It's going to look different, but it can be. But you're not going to do it in your own strength. So it's a lonely place. Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, 6 months before the fire, you and I got together and we talked discipleship. And you had a very specific plan for discipleship. How has that changed, especially with what you're seeing going on in these personal lives?
Thank you for asking. Yes, one of my plans for discipleship is I believe that discipleship needs to happen every single day of the week, not just on Sunday. Sunday starts off the week, but then we need to be connecting with each other every single day of the week. When I came to our new church, I started implementing that of saying, okay, you're going to get together in what we call them just circles of 3 to 5 other people, and you're going to be connecting every single day based on what we talked about Sunday morning, and then you're still going to have your groups on Wednesday or whatever it is. So we had that in place. The best thing of why God knew what he was doing was when the fire hit and community spread, we still had people connecting with each other because they learned how to disciple and walk with each other without even physically being in the same building. We literally had people all the way from Florida up to Oregon that were in our church. But our goal was you can still stay connected. I use social media to post every single day. I would send out text messages every single day, just giving a devotional or an encouragement to keep these people connected spiritually, even though they were never coming back, but to walk with them during that time. The reason why that was so effective is because everyone was everywhere. We couldn't all meet together, so how could we keep them connected? Well, we kept them connected by their relationships with each other and then through the use of technology. It was an amazing way that a lot of people said, I couldn't be there, but I still felt like I was connected to what was going on. And that was a little bit of the discipleship path that we talked about.
Josh, is Paradise not at risk for fire in the future? I mean, it seems to me like, why rebuild? Yeah, that's my question.
Why rebuild? Great question. It is at risk for fire in the future again. I could get into all of the political reasons of why I think the fire happened. I'll stay away from those for right now. Why rebuild for a lot of people? It's their community. It is all that they've known, and they feel genuinely called to say, this is where I'm supposed to be. There is a little bit of a, what's the spirit of the people that want to rebuild? How would you describe them?
They're excited. We have a family that actually, they drove our moving truck from Colorado to California, and their home burned, and it's almost done. They are rebuilding, and they are using their story in every way that they can because they're one of the first houses to be built. They have Yahoo News interviewing them, all of the news stations, and they are standing there saying, God has called us to be here. God has called us to rebuild. God has called us to love this community. And they're taking that stand just to share Jesus' love with everybody and be an encouragement and a light in that place.
Schools. What about the schools? Were they destroyed when you talk about schools?
There were 2 elementary schools in Paradise. Both of them were destroyed. The middle school was not, and the high school was not. So this year when school started, they combined the elementary schools together and made a new school that now meets in the middle school building. The middle schoolers have moved to the high school, and I believe they are running about 40% of the amount of kids before the fire they are running now. So.
Yes.
I was just wondering, with the split in the church, has there been any communication between you as far as we are all Christians, we are all humans, and has there been any attempt at trying to build relationships?
Next question, please. No, thank you. Thank you for asking that, because when I found out about that, when all of that was going on, I was like, are you kidding me? Literally, this is not happening right now. I was talking to this pastor that was starting this church, and in the moment, in the middle of the conversation, this is where God is so good. God said, you're going to bless this thing and you're going to pray for him right now, or this is going to haunt you and follow you for a long time. It was one of those, you either forgive and move forward, or it's going to drag you down. So as I was talking to the guy, I was having this conversation with God in my head as this guy is saying, you're not loving your people like you should, you're not doing a good job of leading, so I'm here to really love on them well, because I'm going to be basically the savior. And I'm fuming. I am fuming. Godly thoughts are not running through my mind at this point. But in that moment, that's where the Lord is like, no, you're gonna bless this thing, because that's the only way you're going to find freedom and be able to keep following me. So at the end of the conversation, I said, you know what? I am not going to stop what you're doing. Am I thrilled about it? No. But I do understand that we all serve the exact same God. And at the end of the day, the kingdom of God is going to advance through you being here, and I'm excited about that. So I stopped, I prayed for him, prayed a blessing over his church, and when that happened, I had this freedom. Now, the things that have continued to happen after, the majority of the staff members that have left have actually gone to that church and taken a lot of their people with them. But I do look at it and say, no, the kingdom of God is advancing, and the best thing that I can do that I've realized through this whole season is just be faithful. I'll let God deal with the results of how he wants to deal with them. I just need to be faithful, and that was a step of obedience. One of the hardest steps of obedience throughout this whole journey was that moment. That's why I wanted to skip that question, but thank you for asking. Yes?
You've talked about being on national television, telling this story, and doing social media. Are there any plans to publish your story?
What's that? One more time?
Are there any plans to publish your story or the story of the town?
No. Yes, I've been keeping a very active journal of everything that's been going on. At this point in the journey, I've had a lot of people ask, are you going to be doing something with this? I said, when I feel like when God says it's ready. I don't think it's ready yet. I don't know what the outcome of this story or this journey is going to be, but I do have all of the notes to eventually possibly do something with it. Yes, great question. What are the immediate needs of the community right now? Do you want me to just take that? Okay, I'll just take that. Immediate needs of the community right now are literally community. They're looking for connection with other people because their relationship networks were absolutely destroyed. So they're really looking, okay, how can I start building and forming new relationships in this place that I've lived my whole life, but I don't know hardly any of these people anymore? That's been one of the biggest. The other ones, the tangible ones, rebuilding. A lot of people in Paradise were underinsured, if not insured at all. We've actually partnered with an organization that's going to be with us for the next 10 years. They come in, they're basically they're a version of Habitat for Humanity, where they bring in volunteers and they rebuild houses. They can build I think it was almost an 1,800 square foot house with two-car garage for about $80,000 in California, which is ridiculous. But the reason they know how to do that is because they've been working all of the fires that have been happening in California, and they said, we want to be here long-term for you. So we are looking for volunteers to come to be helping that rebuild, which will probably be starting next summer. Then there is tangible physical needs that people have because they want to get back there, but they don't have the financial means to do it. Right now, the average, what percentage of the houses? For the houses that are still standing, over 50% of them.
50% are valued over $500,000.
which for the Paradise community just doesn't work. And the reason why those houses were still standing is because there was more space in between them, where some of the more lower houses, they were more compacted together, so it just devastated all of them. So people want to get back, but they can't get back because they can't afford to rebuild, or they can't even afford a house up there because the only ones that are left are the higher, more expensive ones. So those are some of the immediate needs right now.
Businesses that are left. The post office is still standing. There are 2 grocery stores. One of them is not sure it's going to stay open because we are having blackouts now. The fire was started by the electrical company, and so they have swung the pendulum a little bit the other way, and anytime there is a red flag day, which means low humidity, high winds, and dry fuel, they can shut the power off. And they have been shutting the power off for up to a week at a time. And so the businesses and those that are living in Paradise right now are black. And to buy generators to keep the grocery store food from spoiling is expensive. And a lot of businesses aren't coming back because you can't pay employees, and you can't keep, if you have food, you can't keep it fresh when you don't have power for 5 days. So that adds a whole nother dynamic in there. Even the church is looking at how do we get a generator to keep us running. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Because how many days off have you all had with no power?
Enough.
Not enough. But it's a different way of living. It's a different way of thinking. You know, you're camping. The people who have homes are camping in their home because they don't have electricity.
The dynamics of Paradise is going to be an interesting case study to see how it unravels. Because what comes first, the businesses or the people? Because the businesses are saying, we'll come back if there's people. But the people are saying, why would I go back if there's no place to even go and eat? McDonald's is not coming back, we found out. I mean, it's a bad day when McDonald's isn't coming back. We do have Taco Bell, though. Taco Bell is there. But it's this back and forth of, okay, we need businesses back for commerce, but the people are saying, but I'm not sure I want to go back because there's no businesses. And it's this back and forth of kind of who's going to go first. So there's a lot of food trucks right now that basically are a lot of the restaurants. There's been a few restaurants that have opened up. But overall, it's this weird dance of, okay, are the people going to rebuild and then the businesses are going to come back, or the business is going to take a step of faith that people are eventually going to be there? And it's just kind of in this waiting pattern. All the while, you could have blackouts for an entire week that quick. And the political climate in California surrounding all of this has been interesting, to say the least, on top of all of it. So that's been some of the dynamics with the community.
Tell them about your friends that bought a small trailer house to settle in, and what happened with your insurance company.
Insurance is fun in and out. You want to learn patience and godliness? Have an insurance claim. Sorry, any insurance adjusters in here right now. Here's been the problem, though. The insurance companies have all been interpreting their policies differently. For some people, there's something called loss of use. When you lose your home, you get this bucket of loss of use that says, okay, you can use this until you're made whole again. Now, that definition of whole is all over the board. There's been some people that said, okay, I'm going to buy this trailer house to live in, even though I maybe had a large 2,500 square foot home before, but now I'm going to buy this trailer house, thinking I'm going to use this until I rebuild my house. The problem is the insurance company comes back and says, oh, you're made whole because you have a trailer home. And it's like, no, I don't. Well, yeah, you do. You're made whole. And it's been this constant back and forth between insurance companies and people that are just trying to put their lives back together. But unfortunately, and I'm not here to bash insurance, even though mine went bankrupt, it's this back and forth of, okay, how can we do this right? But it doesn't feel like all the times people are really trying to do what's right. And so it's been dynamic, to say the least, of how people have been working through insurance and claims, thinking, okay, we should be getting this, but instead we're only getting this, and you don't have any power to do anything about it. And that's been a hard road to navigate with a lot of people. Another one is the company that caused the fire, their power line, they're in a settlement, and the settlement is asking, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to technically sue these people to get settled for what you're missing? Or do we let the settlement go and do we not sue them? Like, these are real questions that people are asking, and we're having to navigate and deal with, all the while we're still dealing with insurance on top of it. So it's been dynamic.
One last question.
Just curious, what's going to keep or bring the people to the area if there's no jobs? I mean, are there businesses still running besides restaurants and things? What's going to employ these people so they can rebuild or stay there? And the second one is, how do the people who actually stayed, if there's no infrastructure, they have no sewer or water, even if they have a $500,000 home, how are they able to stay there?
There's a town probably just down the hill. It's Chico, California. It is about 100,000 people right now. They have a lot of employment. That economy is booming. Unfortunately, it's not Paradise's economy. It's their economy. But a lot of people have moved to Chico to kind of find some balance, and then that will hold them long enough until they can rebuild up there. But what Paradise will look like when they come back, that's the question. We have no idea. If you're a tradesman and you're looking for a secure job for the next 40 years, move to Paradise. You'll be employed, I guarantee it. But the problem is, outside of that, there's not a lot of major industry that's there, because the hospital was one of the main employers. They're not coming back. They closed their doors. A lot of the mom-pop restaurants closed their doors. They can't come back either, because it was a smaller community that was based on the community sustaining them, and right now there's no community.
For the homes that are standing, they brought in water tanks, and so water is trucked up weekly, which insurance does not pay for. Everyone's finding out. The water system is getting clean in parts, so there are people that do have clean water right now. And Paradise did not have a sewer system before the fire. Everyone was on septic. That is something they're considering as they think about rebuilding an entire town. But it has been, for those that have homes standing, it has not been an easy task to live there.
You have a question, Addison? How are our children doing? Sorry, one last question. How are our children doing?
Oh, our children have been so wonderful. They have been so flexible and so patient. They really had an understanding that I can't even comprehend as we lived away from Dad. It was hard, but they did it, and they did really good. And they have grown up in so many ways, and they are kind to one another. And
most of the time.
Most of the time. No, but it's been so cool to see them be able to share their story now with others. And, you know, it's hard for a 7-year-old to say my house burned down and I lost all my things, but God is still good. And that's what they've been doing. So we're super proud of them.